Okay, so hi everyone. So this is a seventh lecture about the alcohol and other drugs. So the drugs problem may feel like a very far issues sometimes, and sometimes it can be very a close issue because drugs refer to some cocaine or marijuana like those illegal drugs, but sometimes it can refer to the legal drugs such as alcohol or tobacco use like a cigarette or using the aspirins or other drugs. So it's very close but also very complex issue in terms of the debate of the legalization or this criminalization of the illegal uses of the medicines, I mean the drugs. So I will define what are the drugs and what are some like popular drugs in the US, and we will see the related issues such as the patterns of the drug uses and what are some like efforts to reduce the problems related with the drugs. So drug and alcohol. So drug is very wide concept because alcohol is also part of the drug. So with some certain amount of usage and drugs or alcohols or some other drugs. So will it be some kind of social problem? So if we use just a certain level of the drug or alcohols, it may not be very serious or even could be very beneficial for the health purpose. But yeah, as history says, drugs were used worldwide for some purpose, so the pleasure to cure the disease or some other purposes. But I'm saying that in the positive perspectives because I'm saying that drugs are used in worldwide and it has like a good functions such as like feeling good, curing the disease. But I'm not sure we can say that alcohol and drug uses many times causing the individual and social problems if we abuse them. So there are very many debates about the legalization of the using the drugs or limiting or prohibiting the use of the drugs in the society. And also there are some like patterns of using the drugs. So some races are more likely to use more drugs than other drugs, and there are sometimes like a religion or gender related the gradations of the usages. So I will cover that during the lecture, and we want to discover or discuss more later in the writing assignment in or other quizzes. So drugs in U.S. history. So from the colonial area, tobacco and alcohol usages were very popular. And sometimes it can be some type of the prejudice, some immigration of the heavy drinking ethnicities or culture influence the level of alcohol consumption. So it's also debatable. So heavy drinking results in very high level of the crimes or other social issues such as domestic violence or street crimes. And various major types of drugs have been used in the US. So opium and marijuana, cocaine, and so on. So because this is not the biology class, so I will just simply introduce about those history of the on those drugs or the misuse of the drugs very narratively in the society of the US. So opium is a very common ingredient used in 19th century. So it was even used for the patent on medicines or the calming medicine for the children. But it's banned after 19th century, at the end of the 19th century. And cocaine was very also popular in 19th century. So can you imagine that cocaine and opiums are illegal in the United States now? But anyway, after like 19th century in the 1914, it's heavily taxed and banned. Marijuana was also very popular ingredient for the painkillers. So it's kind of also the prejudice, but it's believed that Mexicans can be very aggressive and violent after using the marijuana. So after the like a war against Mexico in the Texas or in the southern America, or maybe Texas was the major state had these issues, but the prejudice resulted in increased concern for public and it banned in the usage by the federal law. the marijuana. So those drugs was illegal at the time of the U.S., but it's illegal in the current U.S. So even coffee and noodles and other the medicines are the drugs because it keeps us like alert or it just changes our nervous system or other hormone system to cure or to change the level of the alerts or the speed or other concerns or cognitions. So if we define a drug as the substance or ingredients other than food affecting the structure and function of the body, if we taken, we are all the drug users. But it sounds very weird. If we say the drug users, it feels like using the illegal drugs. But anyway, in the definition, we are all the drug users if we use the coffee or the non-dose drugs like that. So like Tums, metamycin, aspirin, ibuprofen, those are the drugs. So even though it sounds weird, but it's true that we are all the drug users. So alcohol, ecstasy, cocaine, heroin, marijuana, LSD, tobacco. So there are so many types of the drugs. So it's mostly impossible to mention all the drugs. So I will cover the major drugs in the U.S., increasing the patterns of the problems. Okay, but this is also debatable. So can we say that illegal drugs are more dangerous or more on like disadvantages to the health or others in the U.S.? So alcohol and using the cigarette, I mean the smoking, is legal in the U.S. And maybe using the marijuana or cocaine or heroin are the illegal in the U.S. But there are the legal drugs killing the more people in the U.S. So in the statistics, so it's very hard to say that there are some logical distinction between the legal and the illegal drugs in the U.S. So this is the statistics support that debate. So if you see the legal drug section in here, we can see that the legal drugs result in the number of deaths is more than the illegal drugs. So tobacco and alcohol, these are the major big types of the legal drugs, but it clearly kills more people than other illegal drugs. So it's possible that legal drugs are just legal. So more people enjoy the illegal drugs. So there should be like a very different number of the users of the illegal drugs and the legal drugs. However, we cannot say that legal drugs are more dangerous because there is no special evidence that illegal drugs are more and more dangerous or more negative for the users than legal drug users. So there are major types of drugs, but I will just mention it because this is the biology class. So I hope you don't just close this window because of this issue. So depressants and hallucinogens and marijuana and stimulants. So there are major types of the drugs in the U.S. and it's widely used. So slowing down the central nerves or speed up the central nervous. So there are the uses based on the purpose. So if these are like prescribed well, it may be very useful to cure the disease or to lower down the bad conditions. But yeah, there are so many side effects and there are some like disadvantages in the health, such as large doses can lead to physical dependence or death, even the death, or danger in the cardiovascular system. So there are many disadvantages or negative impacts of the drugs if we don't use well. Alcohol and tobacco are the two legal drugs, but they are very harmful. So moderate usage is not very bad because it's even beneficial to the health, but there are also very many negative signs of the using alcohol and tobacco because alcohol may result in the fatal traffic accidents, and also tobacco may increase the chance of cancer or other diseases. So These are really harmful, but they are illegal. So there are some there was some period of the alcohol prohibition, which is very representative with the like gangs and other criminals. So, but it's legal because politicians and government and society uh, decided that there are more bad parts than the good parts. So it's legal again of the alcohol use and the huge alcohol industry use the lobbies and lobbying the governments and using the sponsorships. So they try to promote their market by increasing the pattern of the produce of liquor and widely consumption drugs. So alcohol abuse results in the very the personal health problems as well as the deadly traffic fatalities, which is like a little criminal. So annually, they are responsible. I mean, the alcohol usage is responsible for the $185 billion of the laws, all related with the causes of the alcohol. And heavy drinkers are it's very common sense, right? Heavy drinkers are more likely to commit so many crimes and related injuries. So alcohol use is already very harmful, but it's legal and the tobacco and nicotine. So even it kills more people than alcohol, about 4 times. It's like a super killer in the U.S. So it can be considered as a slow poison because it can effectively kill the people who are the smokers. So the statistic says that half of the all cigarette smokers will one day die from this is from sorry about that the typo. So from a premature deaths by smoke-related illness. So it's very terrifying or threatening sentence. Using the tobacco and nicotine may not result in very aggressive violence, but still the second-hand smokes in the smoke-filled areas are very annoying and very bad for their health. So tobacco industry also spend a huge amount of money to promote their market and to have some sponsorship to promote the usage of the products, saying that smoking is not so bad or smoking has some a very minimal impact on the health like that. But still, tobacco and nicotine is like a serial killer. Such it's a very strong word, but if this kind of slow poison kills more people than alcohol. There are many illegal drugs in the U.S. So about 47% of all Americans use the illegal drug in their lifetime, and about 9% of people use the illegal drug in the last months. So it's very striking that we have very high level of illegal drug users, even though they are illegal. But still, the survey result may not include the people who are the heavy illegal drug users, such as homeless people or who are in the jail or the runaway teenagers. And marijuana and cocaine, heroin are typically the illegal, the major illegal drugs. But as I mentioned before, it's very hard to say that illegal drugs are more negative or more dangerous than the legal drugs. So abuse of the prescribed drugs would be also result in the serious matters, but also illegal drugs are debatable or debate in it reached like a hot debate in the U.S. now. So parents of the drug use. So sociology usually pay more attention on the parents of the social problem based on their social demographic background, such as race and age and gender, like that. So it's very common sense that males are more likely to use the drugs, such as alcohol, tobacco, and illegal drugs. So masculinity prize more in their aggressiveness and in their courage or something. So partly it's influences on the higher usage of the alcohol and the tobacco. So white has the highest rate of the drinking, but Native Americans have the lowest rate of the drinking. So in the common sense, Native Americans are seen as very dependent on the drugs or something, but in terms of the alcohol usage, Native Americans have the lowest rate, but Native Americans have the highest rate of the tobacco use and illegal drug use. And according to the public impression or public image of the African Americans, they are sometimes believe that they have a very high rate of the illegal drug use or tobacco use, but African Americans have similar or the lower level of the tobacco use or illegal drug use compared with the whites. So Native Americans and whites have a high level of the marijuana or cocaine use, the illegal drug use, and African Americans have a lower rate of the marijuana and cocaine use than whites. So it can be possibly some common sense that or some like prejudice that African Americans have like a higher level of the drug uses. I mean, illegal drug usage, but they still they shows that they have lower level of the drug use, and higher level of education is associated with the higher level of drinking. But it's not related. It's also related with the lower level of the tobacco use. So southern residents have the lowest level of alcohol use, partly because of their religiosity, because the southern residents are more likely to be religious than other parts of people. And South and the Midwest have the highest rate of the tobacco use, and the more religious people are less likely to use the drugs. Yeah. So theories of the drug use. So biological explanation is that the drugs have like the biological functions, infection people's behavior and mood and perceptions. So they say that some people are more vulnerable to the drugs or effects of the drugs, resulting in different level of addictions. So some genetic predisposition impacts on the vulnerability. So we can say that there are some like a biological factors impacting on their addiction level or their tendency of using the drugs. So we cannot deny that, but still there are no clear evidences to support the cause and the effect of the drug usages. On the psychological matters in personality. So psychologists say that personality matters as some people have some, like a strong personality, and some people may have like a weaker personalities that having more dependency on the drugs or more independent from the drugs. So if the people have some like a lower self-esteem or self-confidence or other psychological problems or characteristics, they are more likely to use the drugs. However, it's very hard to define what comes first. So maybe drug use result in some of the personality problems, and also the personality problems imply on the some like a tendency of the using the drugs or high using the drugs. So it's very hard to say that which comes first. So it's a possible critique on the psychological explanations. And also the drug usage, the direct reinforcement and also the indirect reinforcement as the pleasure and the common benefits. So the indirect reinforcement means that people in the community can get along when they use the drugs, such as if they drink together and if they smoke together, they can increase their bond and they can use their social network. So this is kind of the indirect reinforcement as the communal benefits. So sociological explanations emphasize on the impacts on the social environment. So social structure and social bond and social interaction and culture impacts on their uses and the drugs. So people with the weak bonds or with the institutions. So if they have a weak bond with their family and school and other institutions, they are more likely to use the drugs than other people. So peer influences. So if they have some friends who are smokers or heavy drinkers, they are more likely to be the heavy drinkers or the heavy smokers than other people. So in sociological view, drug use pattern is beyond some biological and psychological matters. So in this table, there are the sociological explanations. So functionalism weigh on the function of the using the drugs. So they even legitimate like some very positive psychological effects that the drugs have. So it can provide the benefits to the people, but it can also beneficial for the sellers or illegal or legal drugs. So it can provide some jobs for the criminal justice system. So if we have more crimes, or if we have some more criminals, so criminal justice system can hire more people, and it can be like very economically good. And various parts are like a deal with the drugs. So drugs and illegal drugs can contribute the functions of the society, and also it can be very negative in the society. So conflict theory says that the poor urban people are the victims of the drug uses. So they're because of their poverty and because of their racial inequality and other conditions, they have like a high tendency of using the drugs, both legal and illegal. So also their racial and the ethnic prejudice and inequality use their tendency of using the legal and illegal drug uses. And also the symbol interactionism also emphasize on their interactions. So if they have the higher interaction with the drug users, I mean the high drug users, they are more likely to use the or learn the patterns of the using the drugs than other people who have some, like a lower number of the people who use the drug. So there are like reducing the negative effects of the drugs. So there are like four major types of the strategies on declining the impact of the drugs. So treatment is some like level on like low level or soft level. So like helping the people reduce or eliminate their drugs. So they have some like treatments. They sponsor the people who use the drugs, the illegal drug users, to compensate or to lower down the drugs. So in the volume, they can reduce or eliminate their drugs as a treatment. The prevention is the task of the education. So drug education in schools or drug testing as the informational model. So drug education and drug testing is the informational model because it provides the information to prevent their use. So DARE, the drug abuse resistant education in the schools. But there are some debates that there is not very useful because after applying the DARE, because there, we don't have some, like a significant decrease in the drug uses. So anyway, so this is the prevention as the informational model, and the harm reduction is minimizing the harm causes by the drugs or harm effects of the drugs. So using the clean and sterile needles minimize the harmful impacts of the using the marijuana and or other communis diseases like that. And criminalization and criminal justice system is the very strong ways of the war on the drugs, like punish the users and manufacturers and sellers of the illegal drugs, such as marijuana and cocaine. So there are many efforts to reduce the drug problems. So in the last page of the last part of the textbook, it suggests many ways of the reducing the negative impact of drugs. But however, there are so many debates about the illegal drugs. So does it make sense to arrest large number of people because of the drug possession, drug uses? How about the alcoholics and the cigarette smokers? So alcohol and cigarette might be very dangerous and are very responsible for the deaths related with alcohol use, accidents, and cigarette related disease. But should we keep the illegalization of the drugs because of their level of the risk? It's very debatable based on their perspectives. And also, there are the debates from the the experts with the drugs. So they also support like a discriminalization of the drugs because very strong prohibition may result in the black market and increase the burden of the drug users, usually the illegal drug users, result in the more violences because they lack of money to buy them, so they are usually attracted to commit some crime to earn some money to buy the drugs. So it's very hard to say which is better, like a support criminalization or discriminalization of the drugs, because of the those debates. So it's very debatable that what are the most effective ways to reduce the negative effect of drug use problems. So in the previous slide, we told that there are like a treatments or the prevention and harm reduction and criminalization. But it's very hard to say that which one is the most effective or the most urgent. We need to spend more money on that. So yeah, we briefly covered how to define the drugs and what are the major problems related to drugs or debates about the legalization or illegalization of the drugs. So make sure to submit your quiz and the writing on time and let me know if you have any questions in the class. Okay? Have a wonderful remaining of the Sunday and see you tomorrow.